Is your faith tough enough to handle real difficulties, real problems? Do you have tough faith? I read about these Christians that are willing to sacrifice, willing to suffer, people who are in prison, people who are going through incredible torture and persecution for their faith. How do we get that type of faith? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today on this broadcast. I hope you like these daily discipleship Bible teaching videos. Like this page and follow us on Facebook, subscribe and follow us on YouTube, and you can get access to these every day, daily discipleship with Dave Earley Ministries. Well, think about it. God called Abraham to sacrifice his beloved son. He'd waited 99 years to have his son. He'd been waiting since he was born to have a son because his name was Abram, which means father. And then God said, I'm not going to call you Abram. I'm going to call you Abraham, the father of many. And your son through your son, you will become the father of many nations. But yet Abraham wasn't seeing anything happen at all for year after year after year. And then finally he has this son, this miracle son, this joy of his heart. And then God said, if you really love me, I want you to sacrifice that son to me. What an preposterous, unbelievably difficult request God made of him. But we read in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17, by faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. And he received the promise, offered up his only begotten son, Isaac. How did he do that? He was concluding that God was able to raise him up. He said, God's bigger than this problem. I'm going to conclude that God is able to work through it. I'm going to conclude that God is worth it. And so he obeyed in spite of the intolerable. He had tough faith. Moses had tough faith. Moses, you know his story. He was a Jewish boy in Egypt. Jews were slaves. Pharaoh was afraid they were going to outnumber the Egyptians, and so he started killing the male babies. Moses' mother saved him from being killed, put him in a basket, sent him down the river towards Pharaoh, one of Pharaoh's daughters who didn't have a child, saw the baby, her heart was touched, took him in, raised him as her own son, had Moses' mother actually be the nursemaid for him. But he wanted to help his people, ended up accidentally killing an Egyptian, fleeing for his life. And so Moses has all this going on, and it says by faith in Hebrews 11:24, Moses, when he came of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward, and by faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king. He endured as seeing him who is invisible. And then God used him, obviously, to deliver the Jews out of bondage. But notice this, his faith took action, and his faith sacrificed, and his faith caused him to suffer. And that's why we read about him today. He became such a great leader of faith because he was willing to sacrifice and suffer for what he believed in. Faith is actively obeying God even when it's difficult. Let me ask you, where are you struggling to obey God? Where is it difficult for you to obey? Is God calling you to forgive somebody? Maybe God is calling you to share your faith with a difficult person. God's calling you to love somebody who's unlovable. Maybe God's calling you to give your finances to the poor, or give more of your finances to missions. Maybe God is calling you to love and pray for and bless somebody that's hurt you. Maybe God's calling you to stand up for Jesus in front of your friends. I want to encourage you to have tough faith. I want to encourage you to act in faith with courageous obedience in the face of the impossible, because that is the faith that pleases God and changes history.